Good morning. How are you? Uh, Wipe my camera just fuzzy. There we go. Whew. I hope you're doing well. There we go. So many lessons right now. It's kind of demented in a lot of ways. So yesterday was kind of like hell for me yesterday. And I want to get into it, but I want to talk about an open heart is an invitation. I've lived my entire life. I came here as a heart-centered man, from birth all the way through a whole bunch of different traumas, different crazinesses in my life. I tried to live myself as an open-hearted man. I also had some early traumas that I chose to take on some of the trauma of women to try and help me feel safe in love. But through it all, I was kind of beat down. It was like, holy cow, you wear your heart on your sleeve, and oh, you're way too open. You can't do that. You're too much. You're whatever. And I know other people have had this the same experience, but I always came here to be pure, unconditional love. Even in my Facebook profile, it says pure, radiating pure, unconditional love. And people love that, and they see that, and they want it for themselves. And before I really knew who I was as a spiritual being, I was open all the time, just like a buffet. I don't know, I can't talk about the number of con men and people that wanted to spiritually guide me and all this kind of stuff, and just reached right in and helped themselves to my gifts, to my powers. I didn't know. I was just trying to be wide open and love everyone. And it smashed me. It crushed me. It fucking took my money and made me feel like shit and a whole bunch of other things, but I was learning. And each time my heart got crushed and smashed, it got bigger. And my love became more and more unconditional. I could have been jaded, I could have been angry, I could have been frustrated, but no, this is who I am. So that went into my relationships as well. And I kind of hid myself after I got a bunch of different tests or whatever. I kind of stepped back from relationship, from anything, up until I was 30 years old. But this pull came, and I married the first woman that I met and really dated, and but I knew that I was supposed to have amazing children with her. Now, she loved the unconditional love. She came from a Japanese family, and love is very different there. There's very little physical touch, no public affection, those kind of things. So it was quite the challenge for me to be in that. And as time went on, and I'd always give, and my love was always open, and her love was a little different. It was acts of service and other things, but it didn't have touch. It didn't have things that were part of my love language. So it started to hurt. And eventually I would have either died or I had to move on. But I had an open heart. And then I went into, after my divorce, trying to date and having an open heart. And it's led to a lot of crazy stuff. Women would come in, they'd get what they want or not get what they want, and they'd judge, and they just kind of help themselves, and then they'd feel disgusted because they got what they wanted, but really taking somebody else's love or affection or open-heartedness doesn't work for other people. So they'd be mad. But all the time, and it's only taken till just recently, I've been making an invitation each time that I'd go into a relationship with someone, leading with my open heart and trying to set an example so that they could lead with their open heart. But with all the traumas and the wounds and other things that are in the world, most often they lead safe, closed off, like a wall up, and it could be felt. And like I said, when unconditional love is given and full respect is given right from the start, it can feel very confusing. And they'd come in and they'd sample, and I'd give, and I'd ask for the same in return, and to have balance. And they'd always be confused because I'd give, and then I wouldn't be having to ask to receive, because I was open and waiting for their return of that, and they wouldn't know what to do. They'd be so confused, but their heart was so closed, they didn't know how to receive that. They didn't know how to receive someone that's fully giving and open and then respond in giving and open. So they'd close off even more sometimes. And then there'd be a judgment, or there's something wrong, or whatever, but it just kept me wide open, and then I'd be frustrated. And I'm participating in all this. I'm not blaming women or whatever, but I'm not something that generally exists in humanity, in men. A person that's leading with his open heart and leading by example, asking for the same in return without having to state a clear objective and expectation. Because if I give unconditionally, I would hope that I would respond unconditionally. But people don't know that that's a possibility yet. And it creates a lot of concern and closing off and wondering what my intentions are, and other things. And on my side, I'd end up feeling used and unappreciated and uncomfortable, and that there was something wrong with me. And this showed up yesterday or 2 days ago with a woman, and I invited her into my life unconditionally, and we did a beautiful live and all these things, but some behaviors that she had were taking and using and not appreciating and commanding and other things. And after that day where the live was held and she came up late, and a whole bunch of things happened where she was trying to enforce dominance and telling me how much she loved me and how much she wanted to move on with me, and this was pure love, and how soft and beautiful I was. And she was claiming to be soft and beautiful, but she was underneath, there was just like this frustration in everything. And she's been doing it and loving it and letting these channels through. And she wanted somebody that she could be dominant to, I guess, because maybe she's not so dominant in her life. But I slept on it. I was so frustrated and so angry. She was just like violating boundaries all over the place, and was not even giving me a moment to talk about what my boundaries are and that I'd like something different. And she'd just talk over me and slap me down like in an energetic way, and tell me that by me communicating back what my needs were, my boundaries were, that I was trying to correct her, and she was perfect the way she was, and which is fine. But for me, that's being walked on. If I can't have someone that I can communicate my deepest feelings and emotions, they haven't met the price of admission. So what is your price of admission? What's the thing and the boundaries and the other things that you need someone to come in with? And it's opening with wide open, and still being open and loving, not coming up with a bunch of boundaries, because I could sit here and say, hey, the price of admission is this, and you can't come into my life. No, come into my life. Respond in the same, and be beautiful and loving and open. And when things come up, let's talk about them. Let's share with them. Hey, this didn't feel good. This was uncomfortable for me, etc. That's the price of admission. When you can softly suggest what's going on and share your feelings without the other person being bad or wrong. What's the price of admission? It's a set of gentle boundaries, but being open at the beginning and allowing them to open in the same way, and leading by example, and then using experience with that person to start to find the edges, find what's not working. She basically said that, oh, you got to accept me unconditionally exactly the way I am, or whatever. And I would be eaten alive because there's a broken little piece inside that wants to take and steal and doesn't feel worthy and other things. And how can I reflect that back? How can I open my boundaries and then see what doesn't feel good and then not be able to communicate them? That would kill me. That would make the most possessive, attached, angry relationship. So we need those boundaries. We need that ability to say, this isn't feeling good. This isn't working for me. And then the other person, they don't have to change, but at least they can know that that's that. Or maybe they can have a reflection and say, oh, there's something going inside. I'm angry inside, or my little girl or my little boy or whatever isn't feeling loved. Because love had a price with mom and dad or last lovers or whatever. And they couldn't accept the unconditionality of it without having some pushback or looking for evidence that the other person wants something. But you can't be a wide open book without the ability to speak and stand in some level of boundary, but have those boundaries be respected and show that as love. No, love isn't just like take everything and forgive it all and you must change so that the other person feels loved. No, loved is the gritty little edges where you have fights and you have your shit come up, but you can do it in an accountable way. And you can be received in an accountable way. And when you ask to have somebody hold space, like yesterday, I asked the woman before we had a conversation because I was getting frustrated. She was giving me all these excuses and trying to shift the blame that it wasn't hers. It was somebody else's and I'm sorry and I'll never do it again. But no, the disrespect, the not accountable was so huge. So I said, can we be equals? Oh, I've always told you I'm unequal. Well, then I brought up, okay, well, why are you using this elder name in our lives to say that you're an elder or special or whatever? You cannot say that. You haven't looked at it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to create this container and saying I'm feeling lesser. She can't choose whether or not I feel lesser. Her perception was that she was doing good in everything that she did. And if I can't give reflection back to her to say how it's received in an unconditional way without whatever, but all I felt was anger. And she told me I was angry. How does an open heart get angry unless it's not being respected? It's not feeling that same respect, that same unconditionality being shined back. So it doesn't have to get angry, but it'll reflect whatever shows up. I do not get angry very much at all. But it shows me that there's something sadly, deeply wrong in that moment. You can't be a wide open heart and unconditional love without some internal boundaries. And that's a price of admission that we slowly build over time by having interactions like this and seeing it and saying, oh, I would die sitting this wide open with somebody that thinks they're perfect and they love everything and it's so beautiful and all this kind of stuff. But the minute something's not right, it's frustration, it's pushback, it's, oh, I love you, but do you really love somebody if you can't hear them? And I had to sit inside myself and look at my self-love and say, could I be myself under these conditions, under the wounds that are percolating and I'm seeing through this pushback and an unacceptance of their responsibility? We have to be self-responsible. I'm completely self-responsible. These things that happened were bothering me. And being self-responsible says, I must do something to get out of being a victim. I must speak up. I must tell my truth. I must ask to have a hard conversation that may not be received well. But if it's not received well, it shows me something about that other person. It shows maybe that I have some more work to do. It shows that maybe I struck the truth with them and it scared them and it made them angry or triggered them. That's how we grow. And if you can't go into relationship with another person or allow them into your life without that openness and an acceptance of what is, but to be able to feed back without just like, oh, I gotta be this like soft melon and let everybody do whatever they want. No. If you look at my live that I had yesterday with Lynx, it was completely different than the live the day before. Look at the balance that we had. The one with the elder shaman, it was like an agenda. And she had to get it all out, and I couldn't put a word in edgewise, and I wanted to comment, but there was like, I must share this gift at all costs or whatever, which is great, but not with me. I have balance. I have ideas. I have perspective that I love to share, and that makes everything even better. So I felt so like I wasted my time, or I held a container for someone that didn't respect me. And I felt it, and it showed up, and I had to talk about it because it would eat me alive. And I didn't want to do any more lives in that condition. Reciprocity balance is huge. Thank you, Feather. Balance is what we're striving for. When we're not in balance of love, then anger and frustration and rage shows up. When too much love or you're out of balance the other way, you're just giving to yourself, your wide open heart, and they're taking, and then they're not appreciating you, and they're angry because there's no balance. But without communication and without reflection and trusting that other person can reflect the things that aren't working for them so that we can both make choices. And it doesn't mean you have to change or fix or that there's something broken, but it can show that there's something missing in there. There's something that maybe needs to be looked at or discussed. Oh, you trigger the shit out of me every time you say that or whatever. I'd love to hear that. And then open a conversation and say, I'd love to hear what triggers you. Can I hold space while you talk about it? What do you feel? When's the first time you felt that? If you can't have that in a relationship or unconditional love with another person, they just continue to wither inside. They don't feel supported. They don't feel that you know them. They don't feel that you're listening. They don't feel all these things. And it can go both ways. So right now, this is what we're learning, is this balance to reflect for others in accountable ways with self-responsibility. And that may be direct and that may be uncomfortable, but that's how we grow. We partner. We go into soul contracts with people to rub up against the rough edges to show where our edges are rough or where we're angry or where we've got a trauma or where we no longer love ourselves or couldn't love ourselves because of. And only sometimes with the reflection of another can we feel and start to see it and know that we're not going to explode in that moment because somebody's here and witnessing me and they can help me walk through it, to hold my hand, to hold their hand, and to do that in balance. That's love. That's unconditionality. That's what Lynx and I experienced yesterday. We had no expectations of each other. We were having fun. We were giggling and playing with light language and going outside our comfort zone with another person that's okay with it. We give permission to others. So, an open heart is where we're heading to. And we're learning these gifts by interacting with other people to understand our boundaries so that we don't feel used and a victim and all these things. But it's us that needs to set the boundaries. It's us that needs to learn direct communications. It's us that has to set the ground rules. And I'm not talking like big pages and pages, but ground rule in my relationships is we talk about everything and nothing is said until it's physically said. There's no obligations, expectations, attachments. I'm this, I'm marrying you, I'm whatever, until it's said and discussed and a yes and a consent. That goes into even everything like sexuality and other things where all these things are done on not saying things and expectations and by your words, I understood this or whatever. When you didn't really get yes, or you didn't really hold space, or you didn't really appreciate them. So what's that price of admission? That's what I call it, the boundaries. And it's so simple. Honor my time. Respect me. If I give you those respects, I want the same. And If that's not okay or that's whatever, then we'll figure out something in between. But at least I'm telling it. And then I don't just run around all the time feeling disrespected by everyone because nobody honors time or has integrity or follows through with their word. Those are things that just like gut me, because I follow through with everything, no matter how hard it is, because that's what a man is to me. That's who Paul is. That's the love I give. And the unconditionality is, let's do everything in integrity. Let's not go half-assed. Let's not show up at the door when you do a Facebook Marketplace ad or go to somebody's house or whatever. These are the collapses of integrity that make us not whole. And I want to be whole with somebody all the time. And if they're unconditional and open wide and I'm unconditional and open wide, guess what? We're going to learn balance. We're going to know when things are off by our communication. We're going to know where our holes are and when we maybe take too much or give too much or do things that make others feel uncomfortable. Only by exploring that from unconditionality and having a space where you can communicate, do you refine yourself? Do you purify yourself? Do you become a fully unconditional loving being that can walk on this planet every single day of the week and not be taken advantage of and not feel that and just shine? And the shine burns away anybody that wants to take or steal or harm or hurt because they just can't get in. They don't know what the hell you're doing. But this is how we're perfecting ourselves. And perfection is imperfect. Trust me. We don't even know what perfect is, because the perfection is being able to stand in my anger and my rage so I can protect my boundary. I don't have to harm. The self-mastery is I am, and I'm allowed, and I can, but I have to ask, and I have to get consent, and I have got to have agreements, and I set examples for other people, and then the magic happens. And then my world's better. And all those things that I want to show up start to show up because I'm asking for them. And they're ground rules to my reality. So, is that what you're doing in your reality? What are your price of admissions? And they don't have to be big, but if they haven't paid the price, you're going to always feel used. And they should be setting theirs. You should be asking those in the beginning. And once you have those, so much better. So much better. So, I hope this reflection helped. I've been getting polished lately. But I'm ready, and I'm willing to talk about it and share and give an example so that other people can maybe see that truth in their life. So, I love you all. Thank you for the beautiful comment, Feather, and thank you for listening. You have a great day. Have fun out there. It's a journey. See you soon.